Welcome back to you both. So good to see you. So Selena, let's look at the big story this week, the efforts to slim down the government. Obviously, President Trump is rolling along with this. What do we know right now?
Yeah, so what we're seeing in terms of these mass firings could really just be the beginning here. We know that in this first round of layoffs, they're targeting people who were hired by the federal government within the last 1 to 2 years. So this could potentially impact more than 200,000 people. And we are talking about folks in key roles, for instance, in the Department of Health, Energy, and Homeland Security. And we're also told that they're looking at the military next. Now, workers who've been laid off, they tell me that it's not just about losing their jobs and their income, but they're also worried about the people and the communities they serve, whether that's veterans or farmers. Now, we can all agree, most Americans can agree, that the government could be made more efficient. The deep concern here, though, is that it's just not being done in a strategic way.
Definitely concerns there. Thank you, Selena. And Rachel, I want to bring you in because those efforts to pare down the government are running into some legal hurdles. What are your White House sources telling you about how President Trump is reacting?
Yeah, look, in a lot of ways, this was sort of expected, these legal challenges. I mean, given the unprecedented nature of what Donald Trump is doing and gutting entire agencies and laying off mass amounts of federal workers. But look, we all know Donald Trump does not like anyone telling him what he can and cannot do. And that includes Senate-confirmed American judges. I mean, the surprising thing about all of this to me, at least, is that for the first time, you're seeing people very close with a sitting American president advising and actually cheering him to just ignore the courts and do whatever he wants, and to even impeach judges who are stopping him and sort of tying his hands. Now, look, I've talked to a lot of Hill Republicans. I've talked to a lot of people close with Donald Trump, and everyone, most people, I should say, agree that that's not a good idea, that would be the beginning of the end of American democracy. They're telling him to appeal these rulings, and they think he's going to be victorious in court once it actually gets to the Supreme Court here. But look, we should also make clear that Donald Trump has said he's going to follow the courts. But this is an interesting dynamic we are absolutely keeping an eye
on. Donald Trump is leading the USA into disaster. And it's almost poetry for some in a way, because, you know, there's a dynamic there where there's a lot of people that have said that they were tired of the U.S. dominance, economic power, military power, but also economic power. And if you don't follow what Trump says, because Trump doesn't say a lot, I mean, but when he does, it's very simple and there's no explanations for it. He's allowed to just not say or show much. He's not transparent at all. And he also doesn't believe that he needs to be, you know, because he doesn't work with Congress or these kind of things or judges. He does what he wants. And he believes that's what the executive branch had always had the right to do. So, and he's doing it, and you see how it's going so far. But for the American people, they're being walked into a situation where China is going to benefit. BRICS nations are going to benefit. And we're talking about trade. And if trade is a significant part of the U.S. GDP, then the U.S. will suffer. You tell me if you think trade is a big part of the U.S. GDP. And what I mean by BRICS is BRICS nations want to outdo the U.S. currency as being a global currency, which gives the U.S. an advantage economically. Also, BRICS nations want to change that, but they also want to be a trade solution. They want to establish their own dominance on trade because they think they can better represent trade on a global scale to the world than the United States can. So Trump is walking people into BRICS because Putin is a BRICS member, right? China is a BRICS member. That's two quote unquote adversaries or competitors of trade, competitors of weapons dealings on earth and events like in the Congo and the Middle East and, you know, Ukraine also, right? As you see, China helps Russia fight in Ukraine. North Korea helps Russia fight in Ukraine. You see how they're a part of a trade, military trade, and also economic thing. So it's the same thing. So she's explaining this, you know, in short terms, but.
And Rachel, this is a huge foreign policy.
That's not a good idea. First time you're seeing people very close with a sitting American president advising and actually cheering him to just ignore the courts and do whatever he wants, and to even impeach judges who are stopping him and sort of tying his hands. Now, look, I've talked to a lot of Hill Republicans. I've talked to a lot of people close with Donald Trump, and everyone, most people, I should say, agree that that's not a good idea, that would be the beginning of the end of American democracy. They're telling him to appeal these rulings, and they think he's going to be victorious in court once it actually gets to the Supreme Court here. But look, we should also make clear that Donald Trump has said he's going to follow the courts, but this is an interesting dynamic we are absolutely keeping an eye on.
Now, Donald Trump, he ran on being, shaking up the system, beating up on the rest of the world. We're going to be greater than ever, make America great again. But Donald Trump is literally walking the United States into turning over, capitulating to BRICS and also to Putin. Because think about it. Look, he's already been alleged to do everything and live for Putin, because Putin apparently has something on him, like dirty images, family things, something, assets, business assets, but other things. There's got to be other things. But Putin is also beholden to China. And China is the biggest economic force behind BRICS. But there's others, like India also is a big force in BRICS. India and China are far more relevant than Russia is on the global scale regarding anything at this moment, right? So China is the biggest, factor there. But then they're also backed up by Brazil, South Africa, others. Now, but take a look at this, how things are working out. I mean, this is so interesting. Let's go back to Tulsi Gabbard, who is the CIA's appointee, who's been approved for Trump to run the CIA, right? Now, let's take a look at this one more time and see how it goes. Let me see here.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Quickly, let's go. Come on, guys. Hey, guys, let's move. Come on. Let's go, guys.
Now, he's supposed to interview her right there, but that didn't happen. He just forgot and left the room, right? That was part of this whole thing. Watch.
All right, folks, there you go. President, we were hoping to see Tulsi Gabbard getting sworn in here, but apparently. All right, folks, there you go. President, we were hoping to see Tulsi Gabbard getting sworn in here, but apparently that's not going to happen. So it's embarrassing.
Exactly. It's not going to happen. Look, they had to walk her back in. They had to walk, him back in. They had to walk him back in the room to do it. And this is what happened after. It's ridiculous.
As much as anybody of Americans on both sides.
Look, he's so embarrassed. They had to walk this man back out. Looking like a fool.
Thank you very much. And today, we're delighted to swear in our next Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Most of you know Tulsi. She's a fantastic woman. Tulsi, I want to just congratulate you, your husband, Abraham, your sister, and all of your friends. A lot of friends here. You have a lot of friends. I noticed that, huh? They were all fighting for you. It worked out very well. Tulsi Gabbard's an American.
Did he notice it a second ago?
Of extraordinary courage and exceptional patriotism. She's devoted her entire life to public service, and I've watched her for years on different shows and everything. I said, she's a woman of great common
Everybody that he meets is on a TV show.
sense, and we like the common sense. It's a word that's being used a lot. I think we started
Saw you on a TV show, and now I want you to be the head of the CIA. I always knew that.
it in terms of politics, but it's a word that's used a lot. It's usually pretty effective too, and you really are. I've watched you.
Democracy has this one weakness. It's only one. And every form of government has weaknesses. But this is one weakness that democracy has. And that is, you could elect a fool. You could elect a spy. You could elect, people that are beholden to other governments because of financial debt or family connections or, any type of thing, business ventures, right? Things like this. And they can hold those things over your head. And this is a perfect example of it. But watch this. All he's doing is leading the US into transitioning their global economic power and military power over to BRICS. Watch.
Even on Larry King. You're very young. I don't know how you were Larry King, but
And he's expecting European nations to go along with this, but they're not going to go along with it because they have their own interests too, and they don't want to be left out of any money train or any business.
you're very young. But you were, and you always had the situation covered properly. At 21 years old, Tulsi became the youngest woman ever elected to the Hawaii State Legislature. After 9/11, she joined the Hawaii Army National Guard and deployed abroad 3 times, and highly respected by everybody. So many people writing.
In this picture, in this global fight, for who's going to be number one, there was going to be a loser. And it was either going to be Russia, Putin, the biggest nation on earth geographically, with only 150 million people populating it, the biggest landmass unpopulated on earth. Or it was going to be the United States, a nation with 350 million people, a third of the geographical size. So more population, but a third of the geographical size than Russia. Economy way outdoes Russia. Russia's economy is still zero, really, for all real purposes, until Trump helps Putin fully with some security problems he has. And even though he's acting like he's not helping them, he's acting like, oh, we need Russia. Russia can do we need to just tell Ukraine to back down, Europe. Russia would be afraid of EU also, but they're less afraid when the US walks away. So the US has walked away and they're not doing security anymore. But watch who Trump is walking in, and he can't even really remember her name. He couldn't even realize this is who she was. This is what she was waiting for in the room. He walked
in
out.
letters saying she was so exceptional even then. She continues to serve as a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve, and Tulsi also served 4 terms in the United States House of Representatives, where she was a member of the House Armed Services Committee. She is a former vice chair of the National Democratic Party. Can you believe that? And here she is. That's very nice. We have a few of them. But she was never a Democrat. She was, at heart, she was a Republican. I watched her, and was a 2020 Democrat candidate for president of the United States. It's not easy, right? It's not so easy. People think it's easy. It's not easy. Throughout her service, Tulsi has always distinguished herself as a leader of the highest caliber. She's
the same person he just walked out on.
Democrat candidate for president of the United States. It's not easy, right? It's not so easy. People think it's easy. It's not easy. Throughout her service, Tulsi has always...
Look at her face. Look at her face when he said that. Oh my goodness. Look at her face. Check this out.
Distinguished, it's not it, of the United States. It's not easy, right? It's not so easy. People think it's easy. It's not, right? It's not so easy.
She's conspiring on this dude. Look, he thinks that he's using people. He thinks that these people are working for him. And of course, they're willing to do whatever they have to do to get whatever they want done. But what is it that they want done? Because that's not the look of someone who's genuinely feeling the next person.
It's not easy, right? It's not so easy. People think it's easy. It's not easy. Throughout her service, Tulsi is...
You see how that just faded out, that smile?
People think it's easy. It's not easy. Throughout her service, Tulsi has always distinguished herself as a leader. It's not so easy. It's not easy, right? It's not
You see that eyebrow go up?
states. It's not easy, right? It's not so easy. People think it's easy. It's
Wow.
not easy. Throughout
You can look at that. This different look, thinking about what that is.
her service, Tulsi
You know, gives that face on her look like that dude is phony. You know, something is going on here,
she has
folks.
always distinguished
But
herself
she is now the head of the CIA. And people have said that she has also been conspiring with Putin. Yes, it's public information. This is what they've been talking about. This is the lady, Tulsi
as
Gabbard.
a leader of the highest caliber. She's earned the respect and admiration of Americans on both sides of the aisle as her profound commitment
No? What, did a Democrat vote for her or something? I don't think so.
to the values that
If so, I don't see why.
keep us free. And she really does have those values, much as anybody. In recent years, Tulsi has been a courageous and often lonely voice speaking out against radical left's attacks on free speech and the dangers of an unelected deep state. And I have to say, she was very, very strong for me when I was going through all of the.
Now, you see, he's running on looking after the deep state. He's trying to find it. He suspects there's a deep state. That was his whole gaslighting ploy. But the truth is that he wants to be the deep state, and he's bringing in spies to be a deep state, spies of other countries, people that have said to be spies. That is what Trump has brought into the picture, into United States, everything, security, trade, everything for his own benefit. But the question is, how did these people really feel about him? He just walked out of the room and he didn't even connect that she was there because he's supposed to officially appoint her. And then he gets walked back into the room and they continue. And this is what you get. Now, we're going to watch some more.
The fake news and all of the problems that we had with some very sick people. She was always out there. Before I really knew her as well, she was out there.
They still haven't discovered any of that, group that they're looking for, the shadow group of the American government, the deep state. Where are they? Have they found them yet? No. And they're not even reporting to Congress, any of these people. It's ridiculous. And the Republican Congress doesn't want them telling them anything. The Republican Congress doesn't want to know what's going on.
Defending me, so I appreciated that.
But there's a deep state they're looking for. But the Republican Congress doesn't want to know where the deep state is yet.
We'll see. But the threat of a warmongering military-industrial complex and the weaponization of government and governmental people that go out and persecute.
That's exactly what he's doing. He's weaponizing it. He's turning it into his private business. He's going to get kickbacks, as he always talks about, for doing trade, for selling weapons, which is what he's interested in. That's what he means. He's not interested in the trade that helps American people, food, goods, these kind of things. He's not talking about that. He's just saying a few people that own some weapons companies, they're going to make some money. I'm going to decide who they sell the weapons to. And a lot of people think he meant war was going to decline, because that's what people promised. They're going to give less war. Even dictators promised that. I mean, Putin promised that, to be a hero of the poverty. Well, let's see how long it is before people find out that he's an exploiter also. Let's see. But in any case, watch where this is going with Tulsi.
They like to persecute people that are innocent. Tulsi herself became a target of that weaponization when she was outrageously placed on a suspected terrorist watch list by the Biden regime. It's a very evil regime. After criticizing their appalling abuses of power,
he called the Biden regime an evil regime. An evil regime. Evil.
It's on a suspected terrorist watch list by the Biden regime. It's a very evil regime.
If their regime was evil, what's his regime?
After criticizing their appalling abuses of power, and I'm confident that as director of the National Intelligence, Tulsi will work tirelessly to keep America safe. And she's been doing that her entire career. I think it's going to be a very natural day for you when you walk in. It's just have to keep the way you are. Just stay the way you are.
She's got a cold stare.
She'll be clear.
She's not moved by what he's saying for some reason.
Right, and she'll be focused on the threat of radical Islamic terrorism and lots of other threats too, threats from within, and give no quarter to America's foreign enemies at the
Threats from within. Threats from within.
too, threats from within.
Who is the threat from within? Congress, tell us, who is the threat from within? Oops, Congress, they're not around anymore. Where are they at? They're not around.
And give no quarter to America's foreign enemies. At the same time, I'm entrusting Tulsi with the responsibility of overseeing urgently needed reforms to the U.S. intelligence community to protect the rights and the civil liberties of all Americans. She'll provide the American people with
Protect the rights and civil liberties while taking them away.
transparency, eliminate corruption, shrink the bloated bureaucracy.
Not corruption with Elon Musk, not corruption with Trump. She's not there to do that. That would be wrong. If she found corruption of, even if she ever even thought about it under Trump, that would be discouraged. You cannot investigate Elon Musk or Trump for anything. Okay, not anything. Even though you're the head of the CIA, forget that. That's out of your league now.
And restore
Your job is to do what he says. You're a dog.
honesty, integrity, and trust to the national security state. There's only one thing I can say, that there's nobody like her for this job. This was a very easy one for me. She was recommended by some of the top people in that world. It's a little world, you know, it's a little smart world.
What world? Who was he? Who recommended her? This is like that story where he always says, well, somebody said that this and that happened, and they said that this, and you never get to find out who's saying that around him. Who are these people that keep saying these things about the Bidens or these things about people? Where is it at, the evidence? And by the way, he runs on this stuff. He becomes the president, and then he never finds the evidence. He never puts it out. He never takes anybody to jail. He never prosecutes. He just says it's out there. They still not telling you what they found.
It sometimes can be an evil world when the wrong people are there, but we have the right one. She's had so many great recommendations. I would say Pam was right up there with her, Pam Bondi. She had a lot of I know her a little bit better, and you're doing a fantastic job after about 3 or 4 days, right? You've had a lot of experience, but you've never seen anything like this, Pam, but you're going to do fantastic as the Attorney General. Fantastic. So thank you and congratulations. We did this with Pam a few days ago, and this is again my honor. So congratulations to Tulsi, and I think Pam is going to administer the oath, and when she does that, I'll sign your new certificate. Good. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.
That was so awkward. He didn't even go up to her. They're not even shaking hands after he said that. Why is
very much, everybody? You didn't even finish your certificate. Good. Thank you. Thank you very much. When she does that, I'll sign.
It's almost like he doesn't know her.
Your new certificate. Good. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Please place your left hand on the Constitution and raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I, Tulsi Gabbard, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
that I take this obligation freely
I take this obligation freely,
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
discharge the duties of the office on which I'm about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
It's a big deal. Thank you. Okay.
Okay. Maybe it's because he felt awkward, when he didn't when he walked out of the room. But that was weird. To me, it seemed like there was something missing there. Like they were supposed to. I mean, he just walked right off. Look, he didn't say any. Look, he says what he had to say, and then watch. Look.
When she does that, I'll sign your new certificate. Good. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Look. I'm sorry. He was supposed to step towards them right then as they step towards him, but he walks away. I don't, it's almost like he's not really there mentally, almost like it's just procedural, but okay. I don't get it. But in any case, here, she accepted
On
it.
which
She's
I'm
for it.
about to enter.
So help me, I'm about to enter.
Discharge the duties of the office well and faithfully.
I will well and faithfully,
That I-
purpose of evasion, without any mental reservation
Without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion.
and that I will well and faithfully
That I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
discharge the duties of the office on which I'm about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Something else is going on. I don't know what it is, but it looks real weird. But in any case,
Those of us who are the spiritual children and grandchildren of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, would all be lost orphans were it not
this is Tulsi Gabbard.
for His compassion and mercy. My Gurudev, Srila Siddhasrupananda Paramahamsa, has said that while we will never be able to repay the debt of gratitude that we all owe Srila Prabhupada, what we can do is be pleasing to Him by always taking shelter in the holy names of Krishna. By taking shelter in the names of Krishna, we too may become lovers of Krishna, whose lives are motivated by compassion and love for others. My dear friends, in this way, with the sweet names of Krishna always upon our lips and in our hearts, we will always be able to transmit the transcendental nature and glories of Srila Prabhupada's journey to the United States of America and the Western world. So on this historic and auspicious day, we should take this opportunity to beg for the blessing of Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, so that we too can taste the nectar of love for Krishna and be motivated by compassion to use our lives working for the spiritual and material well-being of others. Again, I thank you all for this opportunity. Jai Shri Krishna. Jai Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada.
All right. So
That is crazy.
that's weird. That's creepy. Very weird and creepy. Dangerous to have this type of a person be the director of national intelligence. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to Donald Trump walking out on her and not swearing her in that moment. Even Newsmax was like, what's happening? We thought we were going to see it. You'll see that. But the other thing.
But check this out. Again, who does this feed into? BRICS. And why is that? Why is that? How does it feed into BRICS again? Through India this time. You see?
Prime Minister Modi straight got to business upon his arrival in the United States. Hours after being confirmed as the head of national intelligence in the United States, Tulsi Gabbard called on Prime Minister Modi for a meeting. Sharing a glimpse of the meeting with Gabbard, Prime Minister Modi said he discussed India-US friendship with her and congratulated her for becoming US Intel chief.
See, most of these leaders, the one thing they do understand is that, and I'm sorry, European nations don't really understand this. EU doesn't really understand it. Maybe the UK does, I don't know. But these people understand when you're dealing with someone you can bribe. And Donald Trump, you can bribe, you can extort. And that's why they love this guy. Now, I don't know why MAGA people can't see that, because these people don't like you, right? I mean, why would they? You hate Indians. You welcome hatred towards Muslims. You welcome hatred towards Indians, Pakistanis. You welcome hatred towards Jews, right? You welcome hatred towards black people. You welcome hatred towards a lot of different kinds of people. Mexicans, Canadians. You're now, enjoying hatred of Europeans. This is only going to backfire on the United States and then everyone else that is an ally of the United States. And this is an example. Watch.
The discussions also focused on enhancing intelligence cooperation in counterterrorism, cybersecurity, and emerging threats.
It was
But right now, Elon Musk. So you see, who's making Elon Musk cars right now? China. He's benefiting BRICS, right? Who's he appoints someone to the head of the CIA. They're already somehow embedded with Indian culture, you could say. But in any case, she's already been alleged to have ties to Putin, direct ties to Putin. And she's shown that by her admiration of Assad, the Assad regime, right? I mean, she has aligned herself this way towards BRICS the entire time. I don't know if MAGA people keep up on that, but every appointee is kind of taking a BRICS approach to this. Vance, he takes a pro BRICS approach to it. Even though they say China, they're doing all the things that basically will lock and secure BRICS for the next, 10 years easily, maybe forever, maybe. You see, and then once the U.S. loses its number one, being the number one currency on earth, that threatens the EU also. So the EU will attempt to align itself, and who else are they going to have to align themselves with? Ultimately, either they're going to work together with Canada, Australia, continue as NATO without the United States, which they are because Trump has announced sanctions on most of his allies. The people that this is going to hurt the most are Americans for electing a damn fool.
Director National Intelligence.
Someone who is weak, someone who likes the ladies, someone who's a cheater, someone who they can get honeypot pictures of, lure into sexual positions. That's Trump. They probably had him years ago. And who was his best friend? Jeffrey Epstein, who the two of them together have been alleged to have assaulted a minor, together at the same time, you see, at Jeffrey Epstein's place. Or was it in Donald Trump's place at that time? I don't know, but it's there. You can easily find the information. It's been a case about it. A civil case documents the entire claim. It was filed against him. And the woman said she detracted it because she was scared, So, would you be scared? I don't know.
Just confirmed Tulsi Gabbard, who met with Prime Minister Modi, and that's significant coming at a time when there are major allegations against officials of the Indian agency. How that's going to really pan out is going to be important. But this is not the first time when Prime Minister Modi met Tulsi Gabbard. Modi and Tulsi met in 2014 in New York when she presented her personal copy of Bhagavad Gita to the Prime Minister, saying it was a gesture to express her love for India.
I, Tulsi Gabbard, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Tulsi Gabbard made history as the first Hindu to be elected to the United States Congress. She even took.
Now, this is funny because these MAGA people didn't like Kamala Harris because what? Her mom was Indian descent, even though she's a Jamaican today, right? But her family came from India, so she's Jamaican Indian, and her father is Afro Indian, Afro Jamaican. I'm sorry, I'm getting confused, but Afro, as in African descent Jamaican, and they focus so much on her mother's side of the family and all of these things. Now, listen, remember all the claims? They even tried to say she had ties to slavery, which she did not. Now, what are your claims to Tulsi Gabbard? Same people with the same conspiracies. Any claims? No, they disappear. She's the CIA appointee. Now, I'm not saying that kind of logic is fair. I'm not even saying it's not fair. It's stupid. But these are the arguments that the MAGA people put up. And what do they get? Okay. Is this what you wanted, MAGA people? Let's find out. I mean, to me, it sounded like you didn't like this, but this is happening anyway to you, and everyone else is watching, like, okay, but it's also happening to them because this woman has no experience at all that would make her anywhere to make her presence anywhere valid around anything top secret, around anything security, around anything at all. You know, she's not even really equipped to secure a warehouse holding, flour, to be exported for aid. You see what I mean? Like, this is bizarre. So only something bad can happen to American people with this type of appointee. Let's
Oath
just
of
be clear.
office on the Bhagavad Gita. She was raised as a Hindu by her mother, who had embraced the faith. Will her presence in Trump administration help redefine India-US ties?
I mean, where are all the Kamala Harris haters at? Where are you at? How bad is it? Do you hate, or has it been resolved now? I don't know. But in any case, this is not only going to harm Americans, right? It's going to harm Americans most because other people are listening to Trump. They gave him a few days, a week or two. They've been listening to Vance. They gave him a few days, a week or two. They've been listening to his appointees. They've given them some days or a week or two as they come in. And this is the result.
The U.S. envoy to Ukraine and Russia says Moscow could have to make territorial concessions in any peace negotiations over the war in Ukraine. He also threatened to target Russia's oil revenues as part of the talks. Keith Kellogg was speaking during a panel discussion at the Munich Security Conference where he faced questions about the U.S. strategy in any peace talks. During the discussion, Kellogg was asked if he could assure the audience that European negotiators would be at the table. Kellogg said the answer was no. In addition to territory, Kellogg said Moscow might have to break its alliances with some of its allies. Kellogg was asked if he could assure.
Let me hear that one more time.
In any peace talks. During the discussion, Kellogg was asked if he could assure the audience that European negotiators would be at the table. Kellogg said the answer was no.
So that's going to be conclusive for European allies. If they're out of the room, then that means they're free to work with security without Trump.
Assure the audience that European negotiators. During the discussion, Keith Kellogg was speaking during a panel discussion at the Munich Security Conference where he faced questions about the U.S. strategy in any peace talks. During the discussion, Kellogg was asked if he could assure the audience that European negotiators would be at the table. Kellogg said the answer was no. In addition to territory, Kellogg said Moscow might have to break its alliances with some of its allies.
To me, there's going to have to be things like territorial concessions as well. Okay, some of it is unrealistic for it to expect where you'd want to go to, but it's territorial. It's subterritorial. It could be the engagement of refusing to use force, renouncement of the use of force into the future. From a political side, he's not going to downsize his military forces. Hopefully, get rid of. What we're going to try to do is basically force him into actions. What you want to do is force him to actions maybe he's uncomfortable with. What I mean by that, as an example, right now is what we're going to do is try to break this alliance that he currently has. He's got an alliance around North Korea that wasn't there before. He's got an alliance with Iran that wasn't there before. He's got an alliance with China that was.
But how are you going to do anything about that when you're beholden to Putin and China? Because Putin is beholden to China. So here's the thing. You could expect that this is not going to happen, what he's saying, because it's the exact opposite of what Trump has been saying anyway, in terms of the messaging. So he obviously wants European allies to think about this suggestion here, and opposed to thinking about how he just said they won't be a part of the negotiations with Ukraine. So That's their security also. They're members in NATO. He's saying no to making them a part of the exchange, to know what's going on, to have them in the room, the negotiations. Trump is saying no to that. Kellogg is saying no to that. At the same time, Kellogg is implying they're going to put pressure on North Korea. North Korea is beholden to China. They're there because of China. That's who keeps them alive. So what is he talking about? That's not a concession. And so he's offering it to the EU like that's a concession, but they're not going to buy it. They're not going to buy it because for the first time, North Korean souls have been set foot on European territory. Yes. That's why they're not going to accept it. So, and American people shouldn't think that what he's saying is true, because it goes against, again, Trump's own messaging. Listen.
Here before he's got an
very manipulative, you know. I don't know if this is his perspective, but he knows damn well that the things that he said before also were not true. He went out there for Trump to be an envoy, came back and went on national TV and said it will take 90 days, la la la, and then we have to do this before we're ready to be at the table with Putin. Now he's coming out to a security meeting, capitulating, doing the exact opposite, but offering a bone, hoping that the European security personnel follow that. Like, oh yeah, great, they're going to crack down on North Korea. We heard that before.
alliance with Iran that wasn't there. Right now, is what we're going to do is try to break this alliance that he currently has. He's got an alliance around with North Korea that wasn't there before. He's got an alliance with Iran that wasn't there before. He's got an alliance with China.
But Trump has gone against all those things that would stop them from being and having these alliances. He went against the agreement with Iran over the nukes. Obama had that in place. Trump took it away. So, you know, what else are they supposed to do? Who else are they supposed to align themselves with? But this is serious. I would say normally you might think this way, but Trump has defied even this guy's logic. And this is his own appointee.
That wasn't there before, meaning 4 years ago before.
DW correspondent Terry Schultz is standing by for us in Munich. Terry, the U.S. Special Envoy wants to break Russia's alliances with North Korea and China. But after 3 years of war, is Washington and...
How can you do that when they're all members of BRICS? How can you do that? That makes no sense what he's even saying. That's the thing right there. That's the main clue. You know, what he's saying makes no sense.
And it's our... the U.S. Special Envoy wants to break Russia's alliances with North Korea and China. But after 3 years of war, is Washington and its allies in a position to drive a wedge between Russia and its supporters?
Well, there are certainly ways they could do that, but let's look at how complicated this has gotten, Melissa. You know, the U.S. may put North Korea and China in the same basket when it comes to the fact.
Look, as the situation as it is right now with Donald Trump, it benefits BRICS nations purely. It benefits China. It benefits Russia. It benefits India. It benefits Iran. If this is their flag, I don't know if that's their flag. It benefits Brazil. It benefits South Africa. It benefits, you know, a whole India. Here's India right here. This is Russia right here. These are the nations it benefits. You see, and this is Ethiopia, by the way. I'm sorry. This is Brazil and this is Ethiopia. It benefits these nations. So they're not going to stop something that benefits them. This is ridiculous.
Fact that they but let's look at how complicated this has gotten, Melissa. You know, the U.S. may put North Korea and China in the same basket when it comes to the fact that they support Russia in the war against Ukraine. But while no European country has a diplomatic or trade relationship with...
And Elon Musk's own business runs out of China right now. So I hope people are paying attention to this. I mean, he's works with a BRICS nation to produce his cars. Himself, the Tesla vehicles.
Pyongyang, that's not the case with China, as you well know. So when they're expecting the Europeans...
And Elon Musk has access to American citizens' data, and the Congress ain't even saying anything to it. And the American citizens, nor the Congress, have access to Elon Musk's personal finance data, business finance data, banking finance data, none of that. This is
to
ridiculous.
cut off China or to help diminish the influence. They're talking about the main source of the EU imports. And so that's a very difficult thing for them to ask. And it's not something that the Europeans are.
Do you think that the Europeans are going to be willing to simply cut off China for what? For Donald Trump? Listen, American citizens, you can go for this, but nobody else is going for it. No one else is suicidal like MAGA. MAGA is suicidal. They want to destroy the U.S. They want to destroy the U.S. economy. They want to destroy the Western economy. They want to destroy the Western power. So why would anyone else in the West go along with that? Why would anyone else in the West say, we're not going to trade with China because Donald Trump is telling them to, when Donald Trump is not even looking out for security anymore, for NATO? He doesn't want NATO involved in Ukraine. He doesn't want, he don't even want to be a part of NATO, really. He doesn't want NATO or any other NATO nation to be a part of the conversation on, Greenland or anything. He wants to do everything himself. Donald Trump doesn't even want the U.S. Congress or Senate involved. He doesn't even want the judges involved in anything he does. He doesn't want nobody involved, and he wants American people to go along with it. And a lot of American people have not hit the streets yet. So it tells me a lot of y'all is still going along with it.
Are keen to do, and especially if we look at the alienation that has been coming just in the last few days alone, this may be leverage for the Europeans to say, hey, look, if you want us to help you against China, you need to treat us a bit differently.
Oh, the Europeans are not around for no reason at all. They're not around because they don't study and work hard, and plan. They're not a conglomerate of nobodies. I mean, look, I don't know let me see. What is the EU's population? Let me see here. What is the population of the EU? That's 447 million people. That's bigger than the United States. The United States has 350 million people. The EU has more people. Okay. Let me see. Now they have trading ties with a lot of people, but if Donald Trump is trying to tank the US economy and business, they're not going to sit back and just go along with it. You see what I mean? Now, the Europeans have a $15 trillion GDP year. That's second to who? Let me see here. Okay, Russia is nowhere close to that, by the way. So obviously, Russia would be naturally concerned about the EU and afraid, because just economically, Russia can't even compare to China, USA, EU. Now, the EU has 15 million, right? And its population is 447. So they don't want their economy to go down. They want it to go up. The United States has 331 million. Their GDP is 25 trillion, right? And then China has $104 billion, and their economy is 15 trillion. So the EU's economy, the US economy, is very strong. It's stronger than the others, a little bit stronger than the EU and a little bit stronger than China. But that's catching up. That's catching up, and Brexit is part of that catching up. So why would China, since the EU is one of China's major trading partners, why would the EU just back up when the US doesn't? Their own security is at risk right now. The US is not even monitoring its own security. It's circumventing its own Congress oversight. That's what it's doing. So I don't know how any American could think this is going to turn out good for them, better than Biden and Harris, or just positive at all. This is going to be a total disaster for the U.S. in every way, shape, or form. And usually it's going to start with the middle class and the poor. The middle class is going to get hurt hardest because they're not used to being homeless.
Now, Ukraine's foreign minister urged its supporters to give all parties seats at the table in any peace talks. Here's what he had to say. Take a listen.
There is no doubt that the only way to achieve long-lasting, just peace for Ukraine is the concept peace through strength. No decisions without Ukraine, nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine, and also nothing about Europe without Europe.
Terry, this comes as Trump officials head to Saudi Arabia for talks with Russian officials. Do leaders in Munich fear the U.S. is trying to bypass Europe?
Well,
It's not the U.S. It's not the American people. It's a hostile force that is taking over the U.S. That's what it is.
it's not their imagination. They're not invited to be at the table, and they've been told they won't be, while at the same time being told that they're going to be the ones responsible for picking up implementation of this deal that's being made above their heads. So they are being bypassed. They've been told clearly that they're being bypassed at this phase of the negotiations, and that doesn't sit well. Nobody wants to be dictated what they're going to have to do in the future when they have no control over what that agreement is going to look like. So that is something that EU leaders are bringing up, and it's very important to Ukraine that the Europeans are there, because Ukraine very much feels that the Europeans at least share the sense of responsibility and certainly urgency and fear about what would happen if Russia is allowed to remain strong, and if these territorial concessions are made to Russia. That affects Europe, and they're not being given a seat to discuss how that might work out.
Terry, I'm not getting the sense that there is a common vision for a post-war Ukraine among the leaders in Munich, but talk about that.
Yeah, not if you're talking about between Europe and the United States. We really don't know what the U.S. vision is. You know, we've heard different things over the last few days. One of the bottom line statements that we have heard coming out of officials is that they do want a sovereign Ukraine. We don't know what the map of Ukraine is going to look like, or what the U.S. is going to be willing to negotiate on that. And we have heard statements from, for example, the Danish Prime Minister here today, who says, we need Ukraine to win the war. That's the strategy for getting out of the war. Meanwhile, you have other countries who have acknowledged that Ukraine can't possibly regain all of that territory, at least not in any near-term future. So, the feeling that we really get here, and I think everyone here would agree on that, is that we don't know. And far too much than is comfortable for the Europeans is depending on the United States and Russia, not on them, and not on even on Ukraine.
Adam Schiff of California, my friend. Safe travels.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Joining me now from the Munich Security Conference is California Senator Adam Schiff. Welcome, Senator. It's awfully good to have you on the show. So I'd like first, sir, to get your response to Vice President J.D. Vance's speech at the conference there yesterday, where he berated European leaders on a whole host of issues. What do his comments reveal about the Trump administration and our commitment to NATO?
They were really shocking and so disappointing, when what I think our allies needed to hear was a renewed commitment by America to NATO, to our European partners, a willingness to stand up to the Kremlin and make sure that we provide Ukraine with all of the help that it needs to fight this war of aggression by Russia. But instead, what Europe got was a lecturing, a condescension, a demeaning speech that really I think just attacked our allies. It was greeted, I think, enthusiastically in one place, and that was the Kremlin. Exactly the wrong message right now.
Well, for sure, because President Trump, to your point, signaled this week an open mind to Vladimir Putin ending the war on his terms. Trump suggested Ukraine could be excluded from his negotiations with Putin. You had Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth saying it's unrealistic for Ukraine to return to its pre-2014 borders or to expect NATO membership. How do you interpret that framing? And big picture, where does it leave Ukraine?
Well, Donald Trump likes to pride himself on being a great negotiator, but it's hard to imagine going to a negotiation with a worse posture than the one that's been articulated by the president and secretary of defense. Why on earth would you go into a negotiation conceding things that should never be conceded? So deeply hurtful, harmful. In terms of Ukraine and NATO, that's up to Ukraine and NATO. Russia doesn't get a veto over who belongs to NATO, not now, nor should they ever.
Senator, do you find that your colleagues in the Senate are supportive of this approach that we're hearing at the Munich Security Conference, or is there bipartisan support for Ukraine?
There's really strong bipartisan support for Ukraine. We sat down on a bipartisan basis with Zelensky yesterday, and I think all around the table, we expressed our appreciation for the
I agree, Raven. It's terrible. It's really, really, I mean, it's no words can describe this, but I would say Americans, keep your head together, but be logical and rational and go back to the source and be decisive. There's no way Congress and the Senate can be silent about this. There is no way. So if Congress and the Senate are silent, they are complicit with it. That's all it means. How they're complicit, I don't know. Are they getting payoffs under the table? I don't know. But they so dumb that they are going to keep their mouths shut because they're too afraid to speak? I don't know. But they are complicit at this point. And I'm just lucky and I'm just very happy that I don't live in the United States. Although I'm an American citizen, born and raised, my family goes back to the colonial period. I'm serious. Like back then. So I love my country, although every country goes through struggles, and I'm not afraid of that. I'm not ashamed of that. But what's going on right now bypasses all the American people's struggles. This is about something else that has entered the country and taken over, and it does not have American values attached to it. It's devoid of American values, and it's obviously been allowed in by corruption, the most corruptive elements in society, like you point out so well. So, and thank you for showing up. Please share and like the
heroic
video.
sacrifice Ukraine has made.
Appreciate it.
The fact that we want to maintain a strong level of support for Ukraine. So I think Zelensky heard that loud and clear from the U.S. Senate on a bipartisan basis. And I hope that we can allay some of the concerns that have been raised by the real mixture of messages that Europe,
Raven, are you located in the U.S. or outside?
Russia, and Ukraine have been getting.
And are you American or are you a citizen of another country? And thanks again for coming through.
From the Oval Office and from the Defense Department.
But do you think that is reaching President Zelensky? Because as you know, just today, he said that he doesn't think Europe can count on the United States any longer, that Europe has to create its own army and learn to defend itself better in the wake of potentially losing U.S. support.
Well, I have to think Zelensky is concerned when he hears, on the one hand, pretty strong bipartisan support for Ukraine in Congress, but he hears different messages and conflicting messages from the administration. I think he, like the rest of the world, is trying to figure out what does that all mean and where is the center of gravity in this new government. So I can understand the apprehension that he must feel. I certainly will be working my hardest in the Senate, and I'll have a lot of allies in this in fighting for strong support for Ukraine and no concessions to the Kremlin.
Let's go stateside here as the attorneys general in 14 states have filed a lawsuit against Elon Musk, arguing that his unbridled power to dismantle entire government agencies and access sensitive data is unconstitutional. What are your colleagues saying about the authority that's been given to Musk and his Doge team without congressional approval? And how do you expect this to play out in courts?
Well, initially, I think the opposition was really just from Democrats in the Congress, concerned about the unlawful nature of these actions, the harmful, destructive nature of these actions, thousands and thousands of Americans losing their jobs, but also losing important work that is really central to our national security interests, the dismantling of USAID, for example. Here in Munich, we've been talking to our partners about how that just abandons the field around the world for China to move.
Yeah, Raven. Okay, so yeah, you're from California. Okay, yeah, and peace out to Californians also, because they were brought into the this criminal type of corrupt way of doing things with the fires, and the fact that Trump didn't want to be American with them, didn't just want to be American, didn't want to just do the right thing for California people, just people, regardless of who the voters are. It can't be wrong for the government to redistribute funding that you've already paid in federal income taxes. And this man did what is so horrible and withheld the funding. California contributes like what, $400 billion a year in federal taxes, I believe, and payroll taxes that they turn over yearly. I believe that's it. And they have the highest GDP of any other country too. So, but it can be expensive in some areas, and they do, global change, climate change is having an effect on them, but that's not a California problem. That's also a Midwest problem. That's a agricultural problem. So one state shouldn't be blamed for something all states are going through, which is climate change, But yeah, I live in Denmark, by the way, Copenhagen, but I'm an American citizen, and I respect Denmark and I respect the Nordic model because it's heavy on education, it's heavy on basic human rights, workers' rights. It's heavy on workers' rights. The Danes respect the rights that they have, which is why they call them the happiest nation. But we're talking about civil rights, right? Workers' rights. Like, they're heavy on workers' rights for men and women, So Danes are pretty happy about their way of doing things. But as you can see, they would never imagine that their own ally, the United States, one of the closest allies the United States has, and all of the Nordic countries have been very close allies of the United States. Canada, Mexico, none of us could imagine what this crazy clown would do, but he is a danger to everybody, and he's just got to be stopped. It's very simple. And I'm on the Dane side with this one, like flat out. I pay taxes. I pay a good amount of taxes, but I'm very happy with what I get for those taxes. And what I get for those taxes, I would pay more for in the USA. I would end up spending more money out of my pocket for the same quality of life. Denmark, you don't do that because people have rights. Workers have rights. It's really simple, So it's I'm sorry. It's just terrible.
In and secure basing rights and mineral rights because we're no longer in the development business around the world. So it started out just, I think, mostly Democrats pushing back, but now you're starting to see Republicans in different parts of the country who are deeply impacted. You've got my colleagues who are.
Yes, I have seen that, and I haven't even had time to really talk about it thoroughly, but it's scary. It's scary. And listen, a lot of Americans don't realize how quickly and easily they could be thrown in Guantanamo. And I'm just talking about any average American. I'm talking about Americans that are families who've been there since the place got called the United States. Any of us could easily be thrown in there just by a mistake that they don't want to own up to. And this regime does not own up to mistakes at all. It tries to bury them. It punishes, people that, what do they call that? What do they call it when you snitch on your own company? They punish that behavior when you see wrongdoing and the correct channels don't deal with the problem. They spill the dirt to the media. I mean, without people like that, we're going to be in trouble. But I'm just afraid right now in general,
Losing jobs in the Forest Service, and you've got other my colleagues that are representing farm states and are losing export opportunities. So I think we're starting to see more bipartisan pushback. But one thing I think it's really important for the American people to understand that's really behind all this. Why these cuts? Why the urgency? Why is the Trump administration and Elon Musk doing this? Basically, they need to come up with trillions to fund a tax cut for wealthy people and corporations.
Democrats are demanding an additional hearing to question Trump's pick to lead the FBI, Kash Patel, alleging that he was involved in recent firings at the Bureau and even may have perjured himself at his confirmation hearing. So a lot of his responses to you were, "Not that I recall." Will any of this stall his confirmation? And do you think he's being put in place to take action against agents who may have worked on cases involving Donald Trump?
We have whistleblower information, according to our ranking member, who that indicate that Patel was deeply involved in the firing of these top-level FBI agents and officers. And during the hearing, during his confirmation hearing, we asked him about this. Did he have knowledge about this? And as you were saying, when I asked these questions in written form, his answers were, not that I recall, not that I recall, not that I recall. Now, it'd be one thing if these were events that happened years earlier, but these were events that happened hours or days earlier. And for him to say he doesn't remember was so duplicitous. So we want to bring it back in the committee. There are a lot of unanswered questions also about 1 to 5 million in stock options that he has, or a stock investment.
$1 to $5 million in stock investments he doesn't want to disclose. Or I think it's in a Chinese company, actually. Is it TikTok, maybe?
He has in a Chinese Communist Party funded company with a terrible record of using child labor and slave labor.
Oh, no, he's talking about Temu? Or is it the other company? No, it's the other company, similar. Hold on.
So we have a lot of questions that he needs to come back and answer. Will the Republicans insist on that? Probably not. He does seem to be poised to be confirmed, which is going to be a terrible tragedy for the country's preeminent law enforcement agency, but also for the American people, because it means that the FBI director is going to be focused on political witch hunts, not focused on keeping them safe. This is somebody who said he wanted to close down FBI headquarters on day one, who is really more suited as an internet troll than he is as FBI director. But sadly, it looks like he is headed for confirmation.
Yeah, that's tragic, Kash Patel. And I mean, basically, he would be the last screw to fall loose in the US government. Of course, the military is intact, but the leader is a lunatic. And as you can see, has outraged every ally that the United States has, and even managed to outrage more than just the allies, because people are outraged over Gaza because of Trump's terms, more outraged than ever. I mean, Trump, those are war terms. So I hope MAGA Americans realize this. Your president is not moving towards making things easier for you or making things easier for Israel or the people in the Middle East. I don't think he cares at all about people in the Middle East. I think he hates them almost the most, to be honest with you. And if I were any of them, I would be very weary of ever have wanted a person like Trump to be president. And if I was an Indian, even though Modi seems to have some contact with the CIA, new CIA director, appointee, political appointee, even though he seems to have some contact with her, hey, poor people anywhere in the world, is there slave labor going on? I mean, is that good for people like that? Is it good for the little people of any country? I mean, is Donald Trump good for the little people of any country? Hell no. Because, well, there's one way he definitely isn't. He doesn't care about workers' rights. He doesn't care about your rights. But in any case, back to Zelensky, because this is very important for Americans to see. The EU is not going to just stand down because Donald Trump's wishes.
House taking new steps to try to fulfill another one of President Trump's campaign promises, ending the war in Ukraine. Sources telling CNN top administration officials are set to travel to Saudi Arabia in the coming days for a meeting with senior Russian officials. This as President Trump's special envoy to Russia and Ukraine, General Keith Kellogg, makes clear Europe will not be part of those talks. CNN's Betsy Klein broke this story. She joins us now from West Palm Beach, Florida, with more details. Betsy, what more are you learning?
Well, Paula, moments after President Trump
Twilight
spoke
Zone.
with Russian President Vladimir Putin last week, he indicated that he wanted those talks to end Russia's war in Ukraine to begin, quote, immediately. And to that end, we have learned that he is dispatching 3 of his top lieutenants to speak with high-level Russian officials. That includes, according to 2 sources familiar with the plans, Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
Wait a second.
Ukraine's president.
If I'm correct, wait a second. Did I flip over to this? Let me go back.
House taking new
Right.
steps to try.
Now this is past. Let me just no, this is oh my God, this thing is
Try to
moving so
fulfill
fast.
another one of
Here we go.
President Trump's campaign promises, ending the war in
So now they're going to Saudi Arabia without Ukraine. Let's hear it.
Ukraine. Sources telling CNN top administration officials are set to travel to Saudi Arabia in the coming days for a meeting with senior Russian officials.
Zelensky told Trump that Putin is scared of him. And Putin is scared of Trump. Putin is scared of the US. Putin is scared of the EU. Yeah, because he's drove his country into the ground and drove everybody broke. Even the industrial complex is broken. You know, just before Trump just threw a doggy biscuit to Putin, their economy was totally on the collapse, like literally. I mean, Trump just saved Putin's life, literally, by doing that. And here we go.
This as President Trump's special envoy to Russia and Ukraine, General Keith Kellogg, makes clear Europe will not be part of those talks. CNN's Betsy Klein broke this story. She joins us now from West Palm Beach, Florida, with more details. Betsy, what more are you learning?
Well, Paula, moments after President Trump spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin last week, he indicated that he wanted those talks to end Russia's war in Ukraine to begin, quote, immediately. And to that end, we have learned that he is dispatching 3 of his top lieutenants to speak with high-level Russian officials. That includes, according to 2 sources familiar with the plans, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, and Special Envoy to the Middle East Steve Witkoff, who will travel to Saudi Arabia, one source tells us in the coming days, declining to say when specifically. But our colleague Matthew Chance says that the Kremlin has also begun assembling its own high-level contingent of staffers, and that's going to include top political, intelligence, and economic officials. Now, President Trump told reporters days ago that he could soon, depending on the status of these talks, meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin himself. And that meeting could happen, quote, in the not too distant future. He suggested it would also take place in Saudi Arabia and indicated that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman could be involved in those discussions. Of course, the Crown Prince has been a key interlocutor between the U.S., Russia, and Saudi Arabia.
Let me see here. Yeah, Raven. Yeah, I see your comment. I'm hoping the EU will help us. Those 2 sociopaths, Elon and the felon, are on the fast track to morphing the U.S. into a Fourth Reich. Exactly. I've studied World War II and the mustache guy. Yeah, true. And a lot of people that didn't, catch on to that early enough, it's strange because people that Nazis want to hurt, or, a lot of people that supported these, support Trump and this fascism and Elon Musk and his fascism, a lot of them are targets too. It's really, really weird. But check this. What was I going to say? This, what is it? This, hold on 2 seconds. Right. The EU, the thing about the US is that the people of the US, right? Let me just go to map right here, Google Map, and see if it pops up. Hopefully you guys can see it. Can you? Yeah, it's popped up. Now, if I zoom out here, let me zoom out. Right? Really the bottom line is like this, and most people understand this. This is the EU, right? This is the EU. A lot of this down to Greece, right? Here, Finland, Estonia is here. Estonia is also part of the EU, in case people don't know that. Here, these countries here, Finland, right? And if you zoom out, then you have Iceland, Greenland, Canada. Listen, people need to understand this. This area right here is going to be primary for Canada and the EU to be defending. And in this area, Canada has a lot of defense. So the EU is going to use a lot of it. Everything the EU has to defend is pretty much on its doorstep. It doesn't have to do a whole lot of transport. It does, but it's not inconceivable because of the radius that is protecting where it's located, in opposed to Canada. Canada's right here on the other side of the Atlantic. So, and they also have a big military and they have big manpower. I mean, more, they have enough manpower. So that together kind of makes this region, you know. But on the other hand, China and without the US, Canada is exposed from the West. And, you know, we'll see how that goes and what is done about it. But this is just the cold reality. Yeah, you have Japan, right? And I mean, I'm just saying, trying to give some perspective to it. But so I don't know. The EU has 15 trillion GDP. Together, it has more people than the US. So if people have to mobilize for their lives, that's not a small. That's not small capability. In other words, that's that's good capability, great capability for the amount of people. And the US has great capability for the amount of people, but you can see it's pretty much in a civil war with itself. So half of those people don't even count. The EU is not at war with itself. American people are divided. And that's what it's going to come down to, I think. You know, I don't think Americans are really caught on yet totally to what's going on, but we'll see.
And Ukraine. One party that won't be at the negotiating table, according to Special Envoy for Ukraine and Russia, General Keith Kellogg, is the Europeans. But Kellogg did indicate that Ukraine will be at the negotiating table. Of course, when and in what capacity remains unclear at this time. Kellogg also indicated Sunday that Russia is going to have to make concessions. Take a look.
To me, there's going to have to be things like territorial concessions as well. Okay, it's some of it is unrealistic for it to expect where you'd want to go to, but it's territorial. It's some territorial. It could be the engagement of refusing to use force, renouncement of the use of force into the future.
So you see, now this is Trump's own envoy stating the opposite of what his Defense Department person said and what his vice president said. You know, I'm sorry, but nowhere can this be conceived as strength. This is the exact opposite of strength. Anytime you practice this type of diplomacy where one of your diplomats says one thing and the other says the opposite, this man is a diplomat. He's part of the envoy, period. And I don't understand why even the MAGA people can't figure out that is a representation of weakness on any level, militarily, politically. It just doesn't matter. It's like not what you do when you feel strong. You know, it's what you do when you feel weak. Oops, I said the wrong thing. Let me send another diplomat to clean it up. And the weak foreign diplomacy has been like that for the U.S. the entire last 4 days, 5 days.
From a political side, he's not going to downsize his military forces. Hopefully, get rid of. What we're going to try to do is basically force him into actions. What you want to do is force him to actions maybe he's uncomfortable with.
Now, we have seen President Trump take steps to dramatically reshape U.S. foreign policy as it pertains to Russia and Ukraine, and also take steps toward rebuilding relations with President Putin. But certainly very critical, high-stakes talks in the coming days. We'll be watching quite closely, Paula.
Betsy Klein, thank you. And joining me now to discuss this, CNN Global Affairs analyst Kim Dozier. Kim, what do you make of this move to cut out Europe from these negotiations?
Well, it's a surefire way to infuriate Paris, the Germans, the Brits, because they have been part of supporting Ukraine up till now. And the Germans and the French were part of the Minsk agreement that helped bring some amount of peace. Of course, it didn't last in eastern Ukraine before. And they've been putting a lot of their blood and treasure on the line, at least treasure in terms of and providing weapons to Ukraine. So getting cut out like this just after getting bawled out by Vice President J.D. Vance in his Munich Security Forum speech, that's how many people took that speech, this is unwelcome news.
What power do European leaders have at this point in ensuring Ukraine does not get steamrolled in these negotiations?
Well, that's one of the things that President Zelensky was trying to point out to the audience, saying, Ukraine is part of Europe and we have to band together because we can't count on the U.S. For our security, possibly in future. He was fairly blunt about it in his speech and in remarks afterwards that the White House had become an unstable sort of arbiter of this, that he was working with carefully, and he was urging all assembled to stand up a European army and start thinking about going it alone against Russia and arming Ukraine to be the front lines of that potential future fight.
And you know what? Here's the thing. That is not a bad idea for Europeans to do, because you have to look at it this way. You're either going to sit back and let time tell the course of history and do nothing, or you're going to prepare for what could be the worst. And what could be the worst is Putin invading and attacking, continuing his attacks on the EU without any type of pushback. And that's what has been going on for a minute now. It's happened with Ukraine. It's happened before with other nations. That's how it is. You don't decide what other people can do. And in this case, Putin has decided to do that, to tell Ukraine what they can do. And the United States is not backing up justice anymore, not in the same way. It has changed its course on what justice means. And it means that Putin can walk into these countries. They can hire people, and even from North Korea, and invade other countries in the EU. There's no way, for the purpose of controlling natural resources and controlling trade, controlling politics and life over other European nations. So it's kind of like a no-brainer. It's kind of like a no-brainer for them. But in case you slipped up, remind yourself the stakes are high and Putin is down still right now. If you show weakness like the US just showed, it will harm the EU. It will harm the EU and Canada for sure.
What is he doing there when he calls for the creation of?
Standing up is going to be better than standing down, but standing up wisely, but don't think for 1 second that Americans have decided what they're going to do. This is the Trump administration, and he is attacking American citizens also. So in every way that possible, the prices are going up. So sooner or later, Americans are going to demand justice also, if they're not tired of watching Trump rip up every agreement the U.S. has ever made in history, including the 14th Amendment.
Of an army in Europe to deter Putin. Is that realistic, or is it simply a way to just get under Putin's skin?
Well, the majority of European countries are part of NATO, and their defense expenditures are spent less on internal defense and more on being part of NATO training ranks, et cetera, to be able to respond to some sort of future threat. And that's why Donald Trump has been urging them all to spend more money on their own defenses. So, this is an uncomfortable suggestion from Zelensky. It's an uncomfortable amount of berating from Trump, but both sides are saying, for various reasons, you've got to start thinking about spending more on your own defense, because in Zelensky's case, he was warning Russia won't stop with Ukraine, especially if Russia is allowed to keep large parts of Ukraine. And I have to tell you, a lot of European officials I've spoken to firmly believe that, agree with Zelensky, and think that the Trump administration might be offering up too much too fast to a Moscow that's just going to take it, agree with it, and then in 2 or 3 years break those agreements and invade somewhere in Europe or more of Ukraine again.
I want to play an interesting moment from my colleague Christian Amanpour's interview with President Zelensky this morning, where he revealed one of the things he actually told Trump during their phone call. Let's take a listen.
As was reported, President Trump, that Putin is only doing this and agreeing to talks because he's afraid of Trump. Did you tell him that?
Yes. I told Trump that Putin afraid of him.
And he is.
Yes.
And he is. And Putin should be afraid of Trump, but he's getting what he wants out of Trump. So of course he wouldn't be afraid. But I'm quite sure he's thought about what if Trump flips the script. And, Putin would be afraid of any US president. He would be afraid of pretty much he's afraid of the EU, the institution itself. He's afraid of any type of unified front against him. And that's what he's always been afraid of. But he's not afraid to prop up others to attack you. So that's the thing about Putin. I mean, you can't live with him. You can't live without him, right? So, but you can live without him, but you're accepting living with him. And this is just how it's going to be. Now, when a person like Ukraine, Zelensky from Ukraine, a small nation, says that Putin is afraid of Trump, even though Trump is a damn fool, and Trump doesn't listen, that's Trump's own dumb fault for it. But just because Trump doesn't get that doesn't mean that other nations are going to follow. Nobody is going to let themselves be pushed around by Putin like Trump did.
And he heard me. And now Putin knows.
The comedic timing in that answer on full display. But what do you make of that? Is he hoping this will influence Trump's relationship with the Kremlin?
Look, part of this is every leader or official I've spoken to who's dealt with Trump knows that they have to flatter his ego. But Trump is also known for being mercurial, angry, vengeful, proudly so that what Ukrainian officials I've spoken to hope is that Trump will put a lot of trust in Putin, and then Putin will early on break one of these agreements, make Trump angry, and that will cause Trump and the White House to then fully support Ukraine as the Biden administration once did. That's a whole lot of strategizing, but other than that, it's kind of like what can they hope for? Kyiv will not survive without U.S. support in addition to European support because the Russians can mass so many forces in terms of people, and its weapons manufacturing has been boosted inside the country and by supplies from Iran, North Korea, and logistical supplies from China. And that's a lot for Europe to compete with to help Ukraine.
Kim Dosher, thank you.
President Volodymyr Zelensky has called for the creation of an army of Europe in a speech to the Munich Security Conference. He says Europe can't rely on the United States and must act for its own sake in the face of Russian aggression. This after warning that his country has a very low chance of survival without US support to fight the Russian invasion. Speaking at the conference, Mr. Zelensky questioned Europe's readiness in the event of a Russian offensive.
Putin clearly sees Belarus as just another Russian province now. And we need to be realistic. If someone is setting up a military launch pad, we need to ask, what should we do about it? And more importantly, what can we do before the next attack, the next invasion? Remember,
exactly,
there have already been provocations on the Polish and Lithuanian borders with Belarus, migrant crisis staged by Russian intelligence to store up chaos in Europe. But what if next time it's not migrants? What if it's Russian troops or North Korean troops? Make no mistake, North Koreans are not weak. They're learning how to fight.
Exactly. And so, again, this is not going into less fighting. This is actually going into more fighting. And usually when the U.S. fights, it likes to benefit from the fighting, and even with its allies. But this is the type of fighting it's turning into something that's not going to benefit. And for some reason, it's not going to benefit Trump. It's not going to benefit the U.S. Well, it might benefit Trump in his own pockets, but it's not going to benefit his nation. It's not going to benefit the EU. It's not going to benefit Canada. And these nations are going to turn away from the U.S. I mean, the EU is not going to stop trading with China if the US is not going to work on security. Because number one, if you're not working on security, that also affects the EU's trade. So you see, so either way, they don't want to be in a bind where they're affected either way. So why would they cut off trade with China when they have no security guarantees with their own allies in NATO? At the direction of Trump? No, they're not going to do that. So the only thing that's going to happen is the EU would have to lean towards China and lean towards BRICS. And that's the logical answer because they can continue to trade without the US. Canada, what's more logical in security, in trade right now? Is it work with the United States or is it turn your back against the United States and trade with everyone else, including BRICS? What's Mexico's best decision? Turn their back on 70 million people in Central and South America, BRICS people that are trading with BRICS, or to turn their back against the United States because they elected a tyrant and psycho, psycho generated, just disgusting, pornographic individual like Elon Musk. How they would just let him walk into and walk around every institution in such a grotesque way just because he has money. That is the end of democracy when you allow that to happen. So I don't get it. Americans going to have to wake up real quick, but other people are going to look after their own best interests. And sorry, you can't beat everybody else by yourself. So, it's not looking good.
Now, how to fight the modern war. And what about your armies? Are they ready? And if Russia launches a false flag operation or just straight up with no insignia from Belarus, like how Crimea got taken in 2014, how fast will the allies respond?
Well, our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucet, said the conference showed transatlantic relationship is under severe strain.
Ukraine continues to dominate the second day of the Munich Security Conference, which very strongly worded speech from the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. And of course, this year's conference is very much overshadowed by Europe's worry that they will possibly be cut out of any peace negotiations and any future peace with Ukraine. And of course, the concerns about the broader security architecture. We're joined here by the European Union's Foreign Policy Chief, the Vice President, Kaja Kallas. Thank you for joining us. Are you still worried about the transatlantic relationship after everything you heard yesterday here in Munich?
We have to build our ties with the new administration, that is clear, and we have to hear what their worries are. But it's clear that we are stronger when we are all together. And we have these threats coming from outside when it comes to Russia, when it comes to Iran, North Korea, but more covertly also China, and we need to work together.
But do you sense that the United States will continue the kind of security partnership that has worked in the eyes of Europe so well in the past?
We have had good meetings with the Americans.
Yes.
Inside the rooms, they are saying that they continue with NATO. We are good allies. And these are the messages that...
But Trump has backstabbed everyone he's ever said he would do anything for, really, except the people who have the $1 billion. And that's essentially what every person needs to understand about fascism. It's coupled with stealing the everyday people's money. So they use the idea to get the everyday people to misdirect their energy and blame minorities and others, people that are at risk, right? In any capacity, people that are treated unfairly or have it unfairly, they go after those groups of people, right? And then what they do is steal everybody's money and disappear, and this has happened before in history, or they die off and no one finds the money. Who knows, right? But this is what's happened before. These people, they just use fascism as a tool to go after the money. That's even more brutal than capitalism. You see, that's more brutal because at least you get a different job. You get the economy booming by using everybody's talents. If you use the wealth that's generated to promote everybody, to give everybody more opportunity to show their talents, to gain more skills in the society, to offer more skills to their countrymen and to the world. Like, and this is the exact opposite. I don't get it, but it's scary.
We also want to hear that we are in this together. Of course, publicly, they are also acting, and addressing their domestic public, which is sometimes a bit different.
The message from America is that Europe has to do much more. You have to increase your defense spending. You even have to look at your own societies. Is Europe going to...
Now, they took J.D. Vance, he attacked the EU's societies, talking about freedom of speech. I live in the EU. We have freedom of speech, but the way the conversation goes, it's not being too harsh on it. It was very lenient on it, but it became a question of hate speech. And particular groups wanted to only use freedom of speech when it was about hatred, you see. And when you couple that with power, freedom of speech is designed to speak up, primarily up, not down, right? And they took away the whole idea of freedom of speech and made it only that the first class or only the wealthy can have those freedoms. And they're starting to take away every other freedom. But European citizens should take note of that. Like, J.D. Vance spoke about your society because he doesn't believe in your model of education, that everyone should have access to higher education. They don't agree with your model of everyone should have access for healthcare. He thinks it should be the rich and not the poor. It's that simple. And it's the same thing with equal housing, fair housing. They don't want the middle class or poor to get fair housing. They only want it for the wealthy. And EU citizens should understand this is literally an attack on democracy. Don't capitulate. You don't have to follow up. Your model is a stronger model, actually. Not that you have to be adversarial towards others, but this is a direct attack on democracy. So don't go for it. Together, you're strong also, even without the U.S.
Step up.
We have heard this before when President Trump was